All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is going to be a knockdown, drag out sales versus marketing. We might have the Macho Man Randy Savage show up or the Hulkster. Who knows? We're just going to have a super, super awesome time. We are here to talk about ROI on events, which, as we all know, is something super hard to understand, define, determine, measure, right? And there's always a little bit of a struggle between sales and marketing on events, whether it's about credit, whether it's about anything. So that's what we're here to talk about today. And I'm very, very excited to be joined by two very, very wise people smarter than me. Let's go on to the next one. Yeah, so we've got Joe Caprio, who's the new VP of Sales at Chorus.ai. Joe, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. And of course, Mr. Krillin it himself, Mark Casaglow. So Mark, we are glad to have you from Outreach as well.
Glad to be here, and congrats on the new gig, Joe.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, man. Thank you very much.
So before we sort of jump into all of it, let's just sort of run through the gamification of this thing today. So we have a couple of questions we're going to ask. We're going to let each one of you decide your own answer. We certainly want the attendees to join. So if you have questions throughout the webinar, please jump in. We want to add you guys to this. Feel free to go to the question or chat area as well and introduce yourself, your name, the name of your company, how big your team is, whether you're in sales or marketing, whatever it is you want to tell and share with the group. We believe in socializing this and having a super good time with it. The next thing I really want to sort of go through is go through, these are our 5 rounds, right? As you know, I've got a bell today, so we're going to use that for a little bit of fun along the way. We're going to see if we can get winners, and at the end of each round, we're going to let the audience decide who is the winner of the round. So, like I said, we're going to have a little fun today. All right, so this is a little different with us having some sound effects today. Let us know if they're annoying, and then we'll probably ignore the answer. So real quick, going on to some introductions for Joe, I think there was one thing that was a quote that was really astute about you that we wanted to share with the group, that you are the greatest thing since sales and marketing alignment, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
All right. So this quote is taken directly from my wife, who ran event marketing at Insight Squared for years. That is where we met. You think I'm bragging. I'm actually just protecting myself. Every answer that I give today is one that she and I have agreed on and she has approved. So if you don't like my answers, you can email Kim Lindquist. These are her decisions. She runs the event strategy.
Well, shit. Where's Kim? Why isn't she on here then? We don't need you. So
fair point.
That's like having Freddie Roach in your corner. I didn't know I was coming to a loaded fight.
Right, I know.
The whole point's alignment, Mark. The whole point's alignment. Who's more aligned than man and wife?
All right, cool. Well, let's go ahead and get started. So let's get serious. Mark, obviously, let's just go right in. Right, it's Marketing Mania #1. This is not Joe or Mark. Notice how that doesn't say it's not Richard, right? That's me when I ask. So let's talk seriously though. Let's get down to the first round, right? What is the overall strategy and reason that people even need to do events? Like, what do you guys think? Joe, you want to start?
You think I'm going to go first? Mark, we've got Unleash in like 3 weeks, man. We just cut you guys a check. You tell me, how am I going to get ROI out of attending and sponsoring your event? Unleash 3 weeks from now.
All right, man. Well, hey, listen, I have done a lot of events in my sales career. And I kind of have a love-hate relationship with them. But when I came to Outreach, I think we finally landed on how to do it right, all right? And so, you know, we got Unleash coming. If you're going to come to Unleash, if you were to be a sponsor at Unleash or any other conference that you're going to, here's the things that I think that the reason why you should be doing them. #1 is to book meetings at the event, all right? Not to sell, not to do demos, not to have a bunch of people around your booth. Is to do one thing, is like the SDR the crap out of that event. Like sometimes I have like, you know, we struggle for a while. Do we send AEs? Do we send SDRs? What we want to do is send our best people at setting meetings, because setting meetings at the event, it works really well. Then also, if you're really smart, you use the event as a catalyst to book meetings at the event, right? So really the event is all about meetings. What that does is it helps you create ROI, helps you set up metrics, it helps you set up goals. You can measure how well it went. And so it's all, for me, the event is all about meetings. increasing the awareness of what you're doing, getting people excited about what you do. But you measure that by saying, how many meetings did we set, or did we have set when we got there? And how many meetings did we set in the future because we were there?
Great. So just out of curiosity, right? So this, and I've been a part of teams where we use the SDR function, right, as to help set these meetings. One of the things that'll always come up around that is, compensation, right? Like if my SDR is trying to set a meeting, are we treating them the same in the compensation plan? Or are you looking at them from a perspective of, hey, this is an extra bonus? Or is it, what, sorry, SDR, you got to do this and still hit your goal?
Meeting is a meeting is a meeting. I don't care if they meet at McDonald's or meet at the event or meet on the phone. Like, just give me some meetings, SDRs.
Got it. And to do that, right? Who helps write the scripting for those SDRs, right? Because again, there's this value of, particularly with all the tools out there, one of them actually we're talking about today. That kind of a message is very different than your generic message of, hey, we'd love to talk to you about outreach, right? Do you let marketing do that from the event perspective? Do you have sales do it? Do you call a special meeting? What do you think?
Yeah, so at Outreach, we have senior SDRs. Senior SDRs are proven to do copy and to have better conversations. They'll help come up with the messaging for that. They're really good at it. And, not to plug Outreach, but Outreach shows us if it works or not. If somebody comes up with bad messaging, it becomes apparent in the stats. I don't know how you've done it, Joe.
No, actually, it's a very similar approach here. I'll tell you one story about event strategy. So early days at Insight Squared, we weren't totally clear on our ICP, our target audience, what type of buyers were we seeking. We knew we wanted them to use Salesforce. So we got a booth at Dreamforce. We flew half a dozen BDRs out to California for the week, and we gave them a goal for badge scans. And we were that vendor in line at lunch, in line at the bathroom, at the Green Day concert, right? Wearing like pale blue shirts that maybe matched the Salesforce employee outfit, and just scanning badges. We did one year 3,000 or 4,000 badge scans, and we converted 3 meetings, not 3 deals,
right?
3 meetings.
Just by wearing a shirt that's the same
overall color. Yeah, exactly. Right. So we did 4,000 scans, get 3 meetings out of it. Clearly, we're doing events the wrong way. Mark, I agree with you. In order, the goal of these events should be meeting with your customers, protecting and promoting your brand, meeting with late stage opportunities, and then doing demand gen. Not first, last. Why are customers first? When else will you have this high a concentration of your customers in one town? If your customers are not going to the event, you're sponsoring the wrong event. Take the time to meet with your customers face to face, build relationships, build super champions, promote your message. And then while you're there, yes, meet a couple prospects, meet a couple new prospects, and bring them home with you for sure.
So let me ask you this, Joe, does that mean, that now customer success should even be at some of these events? Because they're the ones who may be owning some of these accounts, right? Like there's a strategy around that, and maybe there's multiple strategies, but what do you think about even bringing customer success to the events?
I think that the new approach to these events is a very, very intimate, close setting with the people that you should know and care about, especially your customers. So like in this webinar, I know Mark and I agree on this one. We're going to get deep into how to drive customers to your booth and how to get like intimate solo time with them, how to have your customers meet your late stage opportunities and so on. But yes, like these events should be a customer, partner, and then demand gen initiative.
Got it. That's great.
Funny you mentioned that, Joe.
Go ahead.
Yeah, one thing that we did that speaks exactly to what Joe said is for most of the events that we did last year, we would call up a couple customers in the area and say, hey, what's the best restaurant in town? What's the coolest place to go to? We would bring 20, 25 people to a place like that. 2/3 of them would be customers. 1/3 of them would be leads. And it was just a special, intimate way for us to, maintain our relationships and solidify our relationships with our customers and let them sell for us. We didn't even have to sell at the events. They would do all of it for us. And it just was something that you could do instead of everybody going, out to the bar afterwards. Is something that, kind of sets you apart. But we did a bunch of that kind of stuff at all of our events last year. And it just pays off huge in terms of retention, which is just as valuable as getting a new logo.
Yep. I completely agree. with that. So let's we'll end that round, right? That's the end of round one. People are welcome to go into the question or chat box and tell us who you think won round one if you want to. We'll get back to you with the winners as it comes along. Let's go on to question number 2. And by all means, if you have questions or comments around what we're talking about, please put them in the question field. We want you guys to interact with us. So question 2, how do you get your teams aligned around this strategy, right?
You're up, Joe.
All right. Mark, I think you and I have a very different opinion on this one. I do not think that metrics are the galvanizing formula for event strategy. In my experience, metrics divide teams, not align them. So if your goal is to generate the perfect set of KPIs that will get your marketing and sales and customer success team on the same page, all I've ever seen from metrics are, show me my compensation plan or show me how I'm measured and I'll show you how I behave. Well, it is very hard, if not impossible, to create a series of numbers that align human beings to do the job the right way. The reason that I put my wife on the title slide of this webinar is because this is the only time that I've truly seen a fully aligned sales and marketing team. We were friends. I had an active interest in what she was working on. We'd go whiteboard out her strategy for the event. And because I was truly, truly curious in what she was working on and what she was trying to accomplish, I actually internalized her strategy and I figured out how sales should support the marketing mission. I then led my team into the event with the right approach, and I led by example. The only way to align your team is to actually care about your teammates and what they're trying to accomplish. And then even if you disagree, you commit to the vision and you lead your team the right way. That's how you align.
It sounds like you measure success in hugs and kisses, Joe.
Wow, there it is.
Maybe happy customers, Mark.
Hey, listen, it got you married, so it must have worked pretty good. You closed one good deal out of that. So listen, I think there's some scoochiness to meetings and to events and stuff, but to me, I'm a sales guy. If I don't hit the number, then I'm not interested in it being part of what I'm doing, right? I know that there's this kind of cumulative effect and things that happen that help, but for me, I want to know going into a meeting, how many meetings can my SDR set up for my reps that are going to be there? I want to know at the meeting, how many meetings are we targeting to try to set based on the attendance, the number of booths that we are there. We kind of do some stuff. And then we come up with some good numbers. And what it does is every morning we get together at that event. We get in a hotel room or we get around our booth and we say, all right, how many meetings did we have set and how many have we held? How many do we have going on today? What are the outcomes we want to create? How do we want to make sure that we're setting meetings today? How many did we set yesterday? How many do we have left to go to our goal? And with the marketing people there, what it does is it galvanizes everybody around those two specific things, which you can then completely use to measure ROI. Should we go to AAISP again? We know the answer to that because we know the meetings that we set there. We know the opportunities that it influenced. So to me, that galvanized everybody around, let's have a great thing because we know if we do this, a great event, because if we do it, this is how it's going to populate into revenue.
That's solid, right? I think that's really, really good. You came out swinging hard on that one, Mark. I will give Joe a chance to rebut if he needs to, right?
I'm ready.
Yeah, for me, guys. Again, I understand the metrics. How many badge scans can you get? How many MQLs can you create? How many bad meetings can you set with unqualified prospects? How many free demos can you give away at the booth floor? How many dinners can you buy? How many people can you cram into the Thirsty Bear at 8 o'clock on a Wednesday? And then after 4 IPAs, expect to have a legitimate conversation? How many garbage trash dialogues can you create in a week and then come home and tell your CEO that it was worth it? Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Set goals.
Wow.
You and I can high five on the you and I can agree.
It's funny how much we actually agree with one another. We actually agree on this.
Yeah, I think it's great. This is fantastic. There's a punch. Yeah, I got a couple of punches for you. There you go. All right. I love the sound effect, right? A couple of comments coming from the audience. This is fun. So one thing, I do want to go back, in the first round, someone said Joe wins because it was the order of focus that they thought was key. So Joe, thank you for providing that piece. Mark, again, you win according to this person because customer client is separate on the bar event, right? Now, what I don't know is, all these people who are putting in these positive comments if they actually work for both of you. So if they do, then we have to void them all out.
Better not.
But we got a couple of questions around from some people in the audience too that are off the first one. What is what are thoughts on ROI for the smaller events? Like if you go to a free meetup, or there's a sales hacker event that's just a happy hour kind of thing. How do we compare that to the Dreamforce of the world? Because not everybody can afford Dreamforce, right? Hopefully they can come to your event for outreach, but if they can't, what about these small things where you're actually out there, maybe even hustling on your own?
I would say that in like a smaller event or like a meetup type of situation, I don't know how you would measure the effectiveness of that. I think it's just about building momentum, right? Like you're going to an event to learn something, to share something, and to make sure that you're making a connection with the people there that you need to meet. So before I go to an event, I try to figure out like who's going to be there, who are the people that I have to say hi to, and I'm just trying to learn something and share something. And I figure if I do that, then it's a win, and the good karma will come around in terms of getting the meetings and all that. But like I would treat a small event where like I'm just going to, or a couple of us are going to, much differently than something we're spending $500,000 on as an organization to make sure that we're getting revenue out of it.
Yeah, I think that the bar is way lower for ROI on these smaller meetups and like intimate dinners and panels that you can like host or be like featured on, because the cost is way lower. So it's like maybe a co-sponsorship, maybe you split the bar tab, but it's like you're not putting a ton of dough in there. Maybe you send a couple of your salespeople and they kill a couple hours at an event, but it's not like you're paying a massive amount of money to like host a booth and promote around a booth. So the bar is obviously lower. I hate to be corny, but the first time I was in San Francisco for a year, and my favorite part of being out here was like just this community of people that come together and share ideas. And you'd go to these little meetups and these little talks, and you'd see two competitors sitting side by side sharing like go-to-market secrets from their business. And it's about like, how can we all get better at what we do here? How can we reach the right audience? How can we tell a compelling story? How can we learn from the success and the failure of one another to like actually create a stronger ability for all of us to promote what we're trying to do here, which is like just make people better through technology. So in San Francisco, it's amazing to be able to have this like community of people that share ideas. Go to these small events for the learning and the networking and like building your own brand and understanding what the space is like. Even if you don't come home like skewering 3 deals, I don't actually think that's the point. Enrich your people, enrich your brand, enrich your network. And, maybe you get a deal out of it too, but the cost is low. So don't measure it by deals.
Awesome. Yep. Always adding value, right? AVC is the new ABC. So another great question. How far in advance do you let your team set the meetings, right? Are you, if it's Dreamforce, are you setting it a month in advance? If it's, a smaller meeting, is it a week in advance? Like, how do you guys look at that?
Here's the thing. Here's the deal. These sessions take priority over your meetings at the show. So you have higher than a 50% drop off from somebody who agrees to meet you at the show and then actually stops by your booth at the agreed upon time. So just assume that half these people are going to plan to come and meet you and then realize, I really want to go see, this particular session. Those guys will be there later. So they're not going to come when they promise to come anyways. So it's like you could set them months in advance. And I know the correlation between like distance between set and meeting occurred increases the no-show rate. Don't worry about it in an event. It's about putting people into buckets. A bucket of people that haven't talked to you, a bucket of people that want to talk to you, right? And then have your SDRs back home morning of, hey, looking forward to meeting you. Afternoon after, hey, we missed you, come by tomorrow. And so you can still capture those people and reset the meetings. They're not going to show up when they said they were anyways.
Right. So what, if I'm hearing you correctly, I just want to reiterate it, is when you set meetings, make sure you set a time and a place, not just, hey, show up at the booth, I'll see you at the booth.
Yeah, I'm asking them to come by the booth at a very specific time, knowing they're not going to honor that time, but getting a commitment that they will then allows you to use that as the trigger to email them in the middle of the event and say, hey, we missed you. Why don't you come on back tomorrow? So I want people to commit the time, even though I know I'm not going to hold them to that time. It's their event. They're there for the thought leadership and the sessions, not to come get a demo at your trade show booth.
Yeah, we will. So our SDR team isn't supposed to set a regular meeting more than 7 days out. Like the hold rate just sucks. So, but like Joe says, events totally different. People are going to be there. And, we don't set meetings at the booth. That doesn't work. We actually usually have a separate meeting space. We'll set something there. And then our field marketers in the past have done an unbelievable job of sending out like reminders and text messages to the person and saying, hey, listen, just want to know if you're not going to be there so that we don't have somebody sitting there all by themselves. And like that kind of technique typically gets us a really good show rate at the events, rather than just like emailing them like the first day of the event. Like we text them like 2 hours before we're meeting saying, hey, you still planning on being there? That makes a big difference for us. But like if I could set a Dreamforce meeting today, I'd do it. But I'm going to follow up and make sure that the thing shows up. I'm not going to just trust it shows up because it's on the calendar.
Do you agree that 50% of the people who even agree to meet at a certain time, Mark, do you feel like that they still don't show up, or?
No, we've seen that in the past. That doesn't happen for us. I mean, when you set it to happen at the booth, that's what happens. When you get a different meeting room, maybe it's at the bar next door, maybe it's at a separate place inside the same, facilities, and then you text them the day of, and then a couple hours before, they either tell you they're showing up or they're not.
Got it.
Most people will say that, if you do it that way, most people will show up.
Yep.
But if you do it in flow of like, hey, show up at the booth, or, and then people have to decide if they're going to your booth or going to a session, it just doesn't work.
Got it. All right. So it looks like Mark's going to take a slightly different approach than Joe. Maybe Joe's going to have to change his approach going on. So, all right, that's the end of round 2. So let's move it on. If you want to vote for people in round 2, let me know. I'm actually, any typing you hear is me tracking people's votes for who's winning each round. Right now, it's a pretty good even match. It's pretty good. We got a lot of good punches going on. So let's keep them coming. Next question, right? What work needs to be done before the show, right? And God knows that could be a long list. What do you guys think? Mark, we're going to start with you on this one.
Yeah, so for me, the first thing we need to decide is are we going to have the event inside the event? All right, that lets us know kind of like the messaging that we can do and what we're trying to pitch along the way. Then what we do is we review the attendees if we get them, and at the very least the vendors that are going to be there, to see if there's anybody in our open pipeline that we need to make sure that we have a meeting with, right? Then we extend that past to say, is there anybody in our ICP or anybody that we've been targeting with the SDR team or with marketing that we need to try to get there, right? And then we create appropriate messaging for kind of each of those buckets. And then this is the thing that I appreciated most from our field marketer, is you get one Google Doc that says, here's our goals, here are the metrics, here's the hotel, here's the restaurant we're having dinner at, here's who you talk to if you can't get a van at the airport, here's the dress code, here's where the booth is and the map of the event. And it's just like one doc that you can bring up on your phone that just has everything right there, so that marketer can make that salesperson not have to think about anything other than having great conversations, making sure that's ready. And then the last part, which to me is most important, is I call it like heat seeking. Like there's people at that event that you absolutely must hit. And you got to be like a heat seeking missile to those people, and making sure that you've identified for each rep who those people are so they can make sure that they track them down and get a conversation. But those are like from the high level of the things that we really would try to take care of prior to an event.
Joe, your thoughts?
Well, before the event, we do 2 things. We stack the deck that we're more likely to.
And then you roast some marshmallows.
Okay. All right, let's do it then, Mark. Rather than a long list of tactics, I will explain the 2 strategic things that we focus on before events. It comes down to stacking the deck to increase your likelihood of success and training your sales team to behave the right way. So stacking the deck is find your local customers or find your customers that will be at the show and have them at your booth. Schedule your side events. Identify the sessions that promote your message or align to your product or value prop, and then push and drip your prospects to those sessions. Stop promoting your booth or your offer. Nobody wants your free giveaway. No one wants to enter your raffle. Push them to the actual thought leadership sessions that generate interest in what you do. 2 years ago at SaaStr, Tomas talked about Chorus and about how it's changing the way that companies operate. It's changing where you pull your data from. It's capturing all the information that you're missing. He did an entire session at SaaStr about Chorus, and we didn't have the foresight to push people to that session. 3 years ago at a Serious Decisions event down in San Diego, I was at Insight Squared, and Dana Therian from Serious Decisions gave an entire talk about the challenges of forecasting, which was core to Insight Squared's value prop. A bunch of people came right over to our booth after and said, hey, that session was really interesting. Can you help me with forecasting? If we had the foresight to identify the sessions that aligned with our value prop, we could have pushed people to those sessions and then piggybacked on that thought leadership. So there are like a handful of really specific things you can do to stack the deck. Get your prospects to be where you want them to be so you can find them. The other half is training your sales team. So Mark, you and I agree on this. The booth is not for demos, it's for prospecting. So stop bringing account execs who have been conditioned to catch a demo, pitch, and try to close. Bring your BDRs to the events. They're conditioned to penetrate, qualify, and schedule. Have mock booth training sessions, deliver a talk track, give them a cheat sheet, and make sure that these salespeople know what they need to know and will behave the way they're supposed to behave once that event starts. Because once that event starts, it is incredibly difficult to change strategy in the moment. Stack the deck and train your sales team.
That sounds really good. Mark, you going to take that standing up?
Actually, you know what? I think I might have to concede there was some good stuff there, especially the fact that like nobody wants your Raffle. You know what I mean? Nobody wants your Apple Watch. Nobody wants your Amazon Alexa. Nobody wants your crap, right? Like, I'm tired of raffles.
We all know they're just trying to collect business cards because we're too lazy to scan the badge, right? We're trying to get new information. Like, that's what it is. But by the way, if anybody wants to give me the Apple Watch, I'll take it, right? Like,
I will tell you one thing, Richard. Just a slight spin on what Joe said is we did eventually settle in on having our AEs there because our AEs are our best conversators, right? But it was a mindset shift, like Joe talked about, to bump them out of like, let's go over to the screen and let me start clicking around to like, dude, just have a great conversation and get the person to build some rapport with you, get the person to think you're an expert, and like just have a great conversation. That's the win at the booth, not clicking around and showing them some dumb scrring.
Yep.
So we had to take their iPads away. We wouldn't let them do demos. We had to take their tools away.
Yeah, so I'm gonna throw a little bit of an audible to both of you, right? So now we've talked like, gosh, AE should be there, and customer success could even be there, and marketing can be there, and of course your CEO is going to be there. The next thing you know, you can have 25 people at your booth, right? And that doesn't look good either, right? Like there is an image issue, and I think Joe, you brought that up at the beginning. This is about branding. How do you balance that, right? Plus, not to mention just the sheer cost of bringing that many people. How do you balance that at your organizations?
We had a really, really tight strategy last year at Dreamforce back when I was at Insight Squared, and I'll always remember it. We drew X's and O's on a board. We had like an infield and outfield. We had a rover. We had like a very specific format about how you would like penetrate on the floor, bring them into the booth, qualify them, give them like a 30-second overview. If there was an interest, you take them to the meeting space, and we had people kind of rotating in and out. It was beautiful. It was so well orchestrated. But really what you want to do is if your customer management or your customer success people are there, they should be meeting with customers at the booth so prospects can see happy customers. If your C-suite is there, if your VP level is there, they should be meeting with like-minded people, other CEOs, other VPs, and they should be doing like thought sharing, networking, meeting. If your sales team is there, they should be like handling leads or handling prospects and doing hand-to-hand combat at the booth. So people should be there with intent and with purpose, and then assign them that work. And then you have one person that's kind of like watching the booth to make sure you don't look like the unpopular kid at the party when you're just kind of like hanging out and no one wants to talk to you. So man up or man down, staff up or staff down your booth as like traffic comes and goes. So just keep an eye on it.
Holy cow! Is that you just have one person who manages that? Like that sounds beautiful, but that's seems very complex too.
Caprio.
What's that? He's Caprio.
Caprio
can do that.
Magic happens all around him.
Right. I'm looking for some funny sound effects. I can't seem to find one at the moment. So anyway, Mark, how about you? What do you think around that?
Yeah, so we basically take a simpler approach. We look at the number of people we think are going to be there. We say, at any time in our booth, we're not going to have more than X number of people. We need, Y number of people to kind of support that. We're going to have an executive person there or two, depending on the size of the event, to do what Joe said. And then we're going to have like a field marketer there to support us and, make sure that the stuff looks good at the booth and the brochures are stocked and all that kind of stuff and all the materials are there. But ours was a little bit more low tech, but the idea was to just make sure we had a good balance for the number of people that are going to be there, with people at the booth and then executives that were kind of like roaming around, whose job it was to network and to do thought sharing and stuff like that.
Cool. Awesome. What I want to do later, if I want to remember, is I do want to come back and it'll be a one sentence question. We're not going to do it now. Is we've talked about a lot of great strategies so far, and it affects both of you from the big company, right? You guys have leverage and resources that many companies don't. So I know a couple of people are interested in understanding, how do we do some of this for the small company, right? If I'm 10 employees, 25 employees, 30 employees, and I just don't have that, $500,000 budget to go to Dreamforce kind of stuff. So I want to bring that up now, but we'll circle back to it. But I want to let people know who are listening that we are going to have some of those questions coming up.
Richard, I have an awesome answer about outreach around this. And I would tell you too, Joe and I both have done this for companies in that same exact situation. I don't think it's as different as you think it is.
All right, well, why don't you go ahead and say it now then, if it's top of mind.
All right, so outreach, one of the ways we actually got started is we would crash events and we wouldn't have a booth. And we would just go in and we would go to each booth and be like, hey, how are you following up with all these leads? Hey, how are you following up with all these leads? And then that's what we would basically pitch outreach to the people that were manning the booths. And so listen, if you're a small company and you know that there's a conference and there's going to be a lot of booths of people that should be your customers, then go to the conference and you reverse the pitch at the booth. Now, everybody's been to an event. How much of the time are the booths crowded? 5%, 10%. The rest of the time, people are just sitting around wanting to have conversation, shooting the crap with each other because they're bored. If you're there and selling and you're having great conversations with people, it's an awesome audience to have of people that are ready to listen. And so if you're small, don't feel like you got to have a booth to go do events. Go to an event where a lot of your customers have booths and flip the script.
And I do that, right? I'm a sales trainer. I go to Dreamforce and I just walk around and talk to people, right? And I tell them, I'm like, look, here's what I do. I'm not here to try and sell you my training. I'm here to learn because I need to know what are the tools out there that other sales teams are using. So tell me about what you do. And sure enough, that always turns into a potential conversation for me, but I'm very upfront and direct about it. And I'm just, as you said, I'm just walking the booth and learning people and getting to know people. And it's that intimate connection that I think we were talking about earlier. That's the things that people really, really appreciate. You can have the great booth and the giveaways and all that stuff, but where they really want, as you said earlier, is a great conversation with someone who seems to know what they're talking about. So.
Yeah, well, listen, if you're a young founder or CEO, we were lucky enough that Manny Medina, our CEO, and Andrew Kinzer, who's our Chief Product Officer, they were the ones that started that culture. They still tell the stories about doing it, and it makes events real for our team to know that those guys went out and made it happen in the very beginning to make sure that we have the jobs that we have now. So if you're young and you don't have many people, it gives you street cred further on when your company's bigger that you just can't get anyway else.
Outstanding. Joe,
for Richard. Yeah, honestly, I was employee 9 at Insight Squared. I knew they grew to over 200, but in the beginning, we did guerrilla events. We had really small presence at events, and here at Chorus, this is an emerging space. Call recording and conversation intelligence is new. So we're a very small company, and we don't do every event. And the events that we go to, our goal is not to have a massive presence and take over the show floor. Our goal. The entire point of this webinar, our goal is to get face-to-face with our customers and our partners and our interested prospects and have a really personal, intimate experience. Yep. So what we do at these events is when we do a branding or a noise generating exercise, last time we went to Dreamforce, we rented helicopters and we put very specific people in those helicopters and we gave them a 10,000 foot view of the city. And then to this day, Max from Sales Hacker still talks about that on LinkedIn. So the stuff that you do is very focused and very intimate for the people that care about you, the people that you actually want to meet. You don't have to capture the eyes of the entire city. Think about who you want to spend some time with, and then just be very, very targeted on getting time with those people. It doesn't have to be a budget thing. It's a focus and a priority and an intent thing.
Great. That's awesome. All right. Well, let's call the end of that round. All right. That's the end of round 3. So feel free to send over your votes if you've got them. Going on to round 4. All right. So we talked about what you do before the show, and we talked a little bit about this already, but what else are we doing at the show while we're there, while we're live, right? We talked about a little bit, but let's talk a little bit more about it.
Sure. So I have a funny story about this one. I was at SaaStr 2 years ago, and Joe Payne from Lead Genius sent me the best email I've ever gotten at a show. The AC was broken. I'm a big dude. I'm in California. The air won't turn on. It's 100 degrees at SaaStr. And he sends me an email that says something like, hey, man, this is such a sweat box this week. Like, do you want to step outside and, like, grab a drink? And I laugh because I'm like, who's the maniac that's sending out emails to people that he doesn't know with the phrase sweat box in it? So I had to reply. I walked right over to his booth, and I'm like, dude, who's Joe Payne? To this day, like, we're friends, and it's because of that email. So the reason I'm telling you this story is the goal at the show is meet with your other sponsors, right? Meet with other thought leaders, build real relationships, share information, build connections, network, and then make sure, just one super tactical thing, make sure that your sales team is not demoing at the booth. We've talked about it a couple of times. Stop the product demo. Stop trying to close. You've never closed a deal at a trade show floor, and if you did, I bet it churned. I bet you it churned. So stop trying to sell at the show. Meet the people you want to meet, build the relationships you want to build, get time with your customers, get time with other sponsors, and just build out your network and your brand a bit.
So Mark, I gotta know. Tell me, have you ever closed somebody at the show and it didn't churn? He called it out. He wasn't pointing to you, but I'm gonna ask you.
I don't demo at shows, so impossible for me to so Joe's rules: number 1, no raffles. Number 2, you can sign churned accounts if you want to. But hey, so for me, I think it's really important is when you got a crew of people, you're doing 2 things. Number 1, you're paying for them to be there. You're paying for the booth, and there's that outlay. But also, they're not at their desk doing their same job that they should be doing every day. So it's like a double hit, right? So to me, one of the most important things you can do at the show is keep those people full of passion and energy. One thing that I've really learned from my boss, Matt Millen, is that like people's mindset and their energy and the passion that you give to them every day can really like change how they perform. And so like, just getting everybody up, in a hotel room or in a meeting room, 10 minutes before they take the floor and getting them pumped up and excited and talking to them about the wins of the day before and the learnings from the day before and just get them focused on what they need to do that day is really powerful thing that you can do at a show that can completely change the energy of your booth throughout the day, right? And having that single rallying cry that when things get boring, like they can get themselves re-energized with. But that's one thing. And, like Joe, like to me, it's about having conversations, not demoing. Like selling at events is for chumps. Having a great conversation will get you a meeting later where you can actually do some real selling and when it matters. The other thing, Richard, is one of my first jobs in college was, I remember, I was paying for my own way through school and trying to figure it out, and I got a job as a manager of a sunglass hut. You guys know those, right? And I was the one in the middle of the mall, right?
I was gonna say you're at the mall, baby.
I was at the mall, hawking sunglasses. If you can sell sunglasses, you can sell anything, right? Especially $350 Maui gyms, right? And so, but my store got named one of the top 10% of stores in the entire company in little old State College, Pennsylvania, in the Nittany Mall that is like probably less than the size of one wing of a normal mall. And the reason was because what we do at events is I wouldn't let my guys just sit back there in that little kiosk and read their magazine or whatever. I made them actively draw people in, right? So at booths, we do the same thing. It's like you have to have your people at the show, bringing people into your booth actively, engaging them as they're walking past, saying stupid stuff, getting them their attention somehow and somehow drawing them in. Like at Dreamforce last year, we had this corner booth. We literally had reps stand in a certain way so that when people turned the corner, they kind of had to go through our booth or into our booth and into the awaiting arms of reps to make sure that we were like getting conversations.
So what are the things you're telling your SDR to say? I think I love the concept, right? But let's give people some tactical stuff. What kinds of things would someone say if I'm walking by, an outreach booth, right, or a chorus booth to draw me in?
Yeah. So first thing is to say, hey, what you doing here? You know what I mean? You just got to start a conversation. Hey, you got 2 minutes? I want to show you what we're doing. Like, you'd be surprised how many times have you been at an event where you walk through all 30 booths and nobody says anything to you? Like, it happens all the time, but just one little thing saying at least stops. Like, a lot of times I'll just say, hey, not interested or whatever. But, if you're at a sales conference like we are and they're learning about sales, and they just had to Joe's point earlier, they just had a session they got out of about like follow-up or persistence or some sales technique, be like, hey, listen, I'd love to show you how we're doing the thing that you just learned or whatever, and bring them in. I mean, and quite honestly, like, some of it's stupid, just being like, yo, dude, there's nobody in my booth. You want to come in real quick and talk so I'm not here doing nothing? I mean, like, anything works. It's better than doing nothing, right?
Yeah, I see it as like it's almost like the 8th grade dance, right? The boys are on one side of the room, the girls are on the other, and everybody's afraid to just go say hello, right? Meanwhile, you talk to everybody at lunch every day. I see that, we make eye contact, but then we never actually verbalize anything. And it really is as simple as you said, hey, how are you? How's your day going? It doesn't need to be meaningful. It doesn't have to be about what you do at all, right? I just say something, I think, is a great way to say it. So,
stand in the
flow of traffic. How would you guys at your booth?
Stand in the flow of traffic, not in your booth. That's a simple thing that you can do that changes your ability to conversate with people.
Oh, that's a great idea.
I'll tell you what, one of the more awkward but rewarding training sessions that I've ever run. I played football in college. I was an offensive lineman, and so I would take these BDRs. I'd set up a fake booth in the middle of our office, and then I would have, coworkers play the role of a prospect. I wrote out, here's your persona, here's who you are at the trade show. And then I would teach them about body position. And so basically I would make the salesperson stand in the booth and then slowly kind of angle people into the booth as they tried to walk by. And I would teach them like a cornerback backpedaling. I would teach them how to angle their body so that you couldn't walk by without at least moving towards the booth. And the second thing I taught them was that it's not about you. How many times, so Mark, your point is you walk down the aisle and nobody talks to you. What's actually worse is when you walk down the aisle and somebody says, how you doing? And then launches directly into a product pitch. And you're like, you don't know what I do for work, who I do it for, what I need, what I don't need. You're just telling me features about your product. So the number one thing that we taught people when they're at the show is when you get this, chorus, what do you guys do? The last thing that you want to do is just tell them about features and tell them about, like your pitch. Instead, take an active interest in who you're talking to, who they work for, what that company sells, who that company sells to, how that company sells, and then relate it back to your product. But only after you've earned the right by understanding who you're talking to and what they want in this world.
Yeah. So a little bit of pre-qualifying, but you can't make it a traditional qualifying call, if I hear you correctly.
Right.
Excellent. So this is a great question, and I have an opinion on this one, but I'm going to let you guys go first. At the show, and I see this all the time, do you announce PR at big events? If you're going to Dreamforce, do you announce, hey, my latest round of funding? If I'm going to SaaStr, do I do that? How does PR help or hurt or get lost in the noise of a specific event?
Look, I'll go first. I think it's less about does your PR belong at the event or not. It's more like, is that actual PR or is that worthy of PR? I think a lot of companies want to kind of like, it's exciting. 160,000 people flying to San Francisco for Dreamforce, right? Like, Mark, like all the best companies are going to be at Unleash. Like all the good progressive companies that use tech to enable their sales teams are going to go to Unleash. So it gets exciting. It's raw. There's energy. And then all the vendors are like, ooh, I could piggyback on that by announcing a new set of features that nobody asked for and nobody cares about. So for me, it's less about like, should you do the PR at the event? It's like, is that even PR? Or are you just kind of clouding the market with more noise? Focus on what you're there for. Focus on the sessions that align to your message. Focus on the people that you want to meet. Build good relationships. Listen to people while you're there. And like save the marketing stuff for another day.
Got it. All right. Mark, how about you? What do you think?
Dude, I'm just a sales guy. That's a decision above my pay grade.
Oh, come on, don't wimp out on that.
If they
Come
want
on.
to do PR, that's fine. They can do PR. I mean, I would say, Joe's like, don't drum something up that doesn't give me something to talk about, though.
No, but there's some bad look. There are people, there are people where they announce their round of funding and they do it at SaaStr, right? Then they put out a PR thing, right? They do it around Dreamforce, and I see some of the value in that, right? But my opinion is that you're fighting too much noise anyway. Nobody's looking at the PR newswire. Nobody's looking at Crunchbase on that day, right? During that time. Maybe you announce it 2 weeks ahead of time, so then you can try and build some leverage and maybe set some extra appointments because now people know you have money. But that trying to announce something big at a big event, I think is really, really, really hard, right? I've seen some people where their competitors having events, so they'll announce some PR around the same time of that event to get everybody who's not going, right? I've seen that happen. That may be an interesting strategy, but we'll have to see where that all plays out. All right, on to our fifth question.
What was that? You announce PR at your competitor's event? That's like when Brett Favre would retire every year right around the Super Bowl, and he would put his press release out that he's not retiring for another year. Yeah, that's like some plus me type marketing. Yeah,
right, exactly. So, but you got to hope someone picks it up too, right? And, it depends. Look, and again, let's be honest. If I'm going to try and announce something against Dreamforce, I don't know that I would while I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area. Interesting, last year I was outside the Bay Area the first 2 days of Dreamforce, and nobody on the East Coast was talking about Dreamforce. I think the three of us and many people listening, we get caught up in our bubble. So I think it's a challenge.
Amen.
So there could be value if you're not a West Coast company and you're not going after the Dreamforce customers. It's not going to matter anyway. So. Great question coming from the audience. How do you learn about new events that might be interesting for you, right? Understanding which are the best ones for your clients. How do you, right? So, particularly in both of your spaces, right? We know the events that matter to Chorus and to Outreach fairly well, right? So, but how do you keep finding new events?
Well, sometimes we talk to our customers, but if we have we dominate the security industry. We have so many high-level security companies that it's easy for us to get other people. So we talk to them what security conferences should we be at and ask our best customers. And I think that's a really strong way to find out about other places where people that you already have as customers are living, where you can go get more people like them.
So if I hear
agree.
you,
I think if you're, sorry, Rich, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Joe.
I totally agree, Mark. I think if you're doing events that your customers don't go to, you're doing the wrong events. So who else should you ask other than your customers? I think your partners and like-minded vendors, like Outreach and Chorus, they make a ton of sense together. They both enable sales teams. So the events that Mark wants to go to, I want to go to. The events that Mark's customers go to, I want to go to. The events that Chorus customers go to, Mark wants to be at. So talk to your customers, talk to your friendly vendors, talk to your partners, and figure out where are the fish that you're trying to catch, right? And that's where you belong. So.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, how many events do you guys each go to, or does your company go to, that are not the SaaStrs, the Dreamforces, right? The ones that we all live and swim in sort of on a daily SaaS San Francisco day, right? Are you going to RSA, Mark, because you guys have security people in security?
Yeah, we're there right now. Yep.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah,
So
we do AAISP. We're not doing it this year. We've done it in the past, but that's been another one that's been pretty good. That isn't as techy as the other ones are, but that's been a good channel for us at times.
Yeah, I think if I'm hearing you correctly, it's you got to understand your verticals, right? And you got to understand which verticals you're going after, right? If you're going after the financial banking industry and you've got great customer stories you can share, you should find out what events they're going to, right? And I think outside the world that most of us live in, or at least the three of us do, we often lose sight of that, right? And hopefully that's your marketing job's role to realize that these are the other great events to go to that are sexy for your customers, not just sexy for you, because that's where you belong. All right, so we talked about pre-show, we talked about during the show, talk about what happens after the show. What should you be doing? Oh, I guess I need to do the round thing. So, but go ahead. While we wait, go for it.
So for post show, to me, this is where you make the money. This is, oh, there it is.
There it is. There it is. Yeah.
This is where like you take the ballers away from the imitators, right? Like post show is where things really happen. So for us, we're lucky enough, we have a technology that when we take a lead list, we can load it into Salesforce or can load in there automatically, depending on how we set up with our vendors. And then immediately they get put into the right kind of messaging for a BDR to go after and to follow up and to make sure that they're going. Like for us, the most important thing post-show is to make sure that the people that are going to follow up with those leads, which in our case, SDRs, are empowered with a sequence or a series of touch points or sales touch points that you're going to do over a specific period of time with the messaging that you want those people to do that you can test over time to make sure it's converting people. But like other than that, post-show, like I think that if you can't nail that, then it doesn't matter what else you do post-show. That's the most important thing. Like I can't remember how many leads we got from Dreamforce last year. But do you know how many of those leads didn't get touched 10 times over the next 6 weeks?
99%.
They all did, every single one of them. And like, now we can actually see like, what did this show mean to us? What did it do? How good were we in the booth? How effective was our booth in getting people to want to re-engage with us? How good were the talks that we did? And so, I think that like all of that's measured post-show, but if you don't have those touch points in place and that prospecting discipline post-show, like you would going after a cold prospect, then you're never going to realize the full, what that could fully be.
Got it. All right, Joe, what do you think?
I mean, how am I going to compete with outreach on how to execute a proper post-show strategy?
Come on,
I would have to pitch
baller,
outreach
man.
better than I would have to pitch outreach better than Mark pitches outreach. Look, the 4,000 badge scans and 3 meetings converted came down to the fact that there was a definition of an MQL that prevented badge scans from getting into our marketing automation. So marketing didn't nurture the leads that we scanned. It also didn't go to the sales team because the sales team thought that marketing was nurturing. So we scanned 4,000 badges. We came home from the show and nobody called them. Nobody emailed them. So we bought outreach. We implemented outreach and we put, very specific talk tracks by lead type. Don't talk to the guy who comes to your party the same way you talk to the person who comes to your booth, the same way the person that you do a private demo for. So divide your lead types into like how deep in the engagement you got, write custom nurture drips for each lead type, put it into the SDR's queue, force the follow-up. And then the last thing I'd say about post-show is make sure that you map like every single thing, every influence, every conversation, every lead, every meeting back to the show, or say goodbye to doing shows.
Yep. So that's a great answer. I love that. So here's sort of a bonus question. A couple people are asking and making some suggestions. What tools are out there to help you do some of this stuff, right? Are there apps out there, right? Is it as simple as just having Eventbrite help you invite people to a dinner or a cocktail hour, right? That's separate from something, right? Or was it paperless post or any of those things? What are some of the tools you guys are using or your marketing team might be using that you've seen be helpful in this realm?
There's one tool that we use that kicks ass for us, and it's our own tool. So I'm not going to go into a pitch, but like that's the only tool we use and the only tool we need. The only thing that we need sometimes, Richard, is like a Zoom info or something like that to help us get like great lead contact information into our system so that we can like compare that against like the people that we think or the people that are in that geography, the accounts that are in that geography, to make sure we put that great fuel into the engine that we've created. But, I'm not going to like pitch outreach on this, but that's what we use.
Okay. Joe, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very similar story. I mean, if you're using Salesforce as a system of record, and if you're using outreach as a way to like force the right talk tracks out from your prospecting team, then you should be able to do this in an intelligent way. You probably want some scheduling app like a Chili Piper or a Calendly. You probably want right, there are things that you should arm your team with, but like ultimately what it comes down to is like a really smart operations or, BDR or MarkOps type to generate the list of prospects, You need a good copywriter, whether it's like your senior SDR or somebody in marketing or sales enablement to write the right drips. And then you need a taskmaster or sales manager to make sure that like those drips get executed to the right lists. So build out the right lists, write the right talk tracks, and then action the invites.
Yep. So let's shift it a little bit too, because this is actually a good one, I think, for Mark, because you guys are about to have an event called Unleash, May 6th and 8th in San Diego. It's about sales excellence. How are you guys creating an app? What do you think of the apps that events are putting in to let people try to be connected and be more human, right? And find people. Are you a fan of that? What do you think?
I don't think we're doing an app. I haven't heard that we are, so I don't think we are. I think that when I've come to events that have the app, the only thing that mattered to me was the easily available agenda. Like using it to like all this social stuff and meeting people like that. Like, listen, we're coming to things already knowing who we want to meet, already in contact with them. And then, I'm going out and we're talking to people and you're just making those natural connections. I've never used an app to do all the stuff. That doesn't mean it doesn't work. Maybe I should try it, but like I've never used it. It doesn't have a value add to me. I just want to know what the agenda is, so I can go to the right room.
Mark, how about you?
Joe. Yeah.
Joe, I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. Similar answer. I think that this is like this is a tough space. I think that this is a space that's ready for like a really good piece of technology. I know my friend Jim McDonough back in Boston was at this company called Attend, and they tried to do some stuff like this, tell you when your late stage prospects show up and like kind of help you keep track of things in a better way. I don't know that there's a company out there that's doing this for you, but that's just all the more reason that you really have to be on the same page as your marketing and your ops team, and you have to get your team coached up to do it the right way. I don't know that there's a tech that's going to help us kind of capture this stuff and store it the right way right now. So I think you just have to double down on your human effort and be like really, really thoughtful and strategic ahead of time.
There's a couple things I would recommend. If you're using those apps, it could be much better at the SDR level, because one of the beautiful things is if people have loaded their information in there, you're going to get a hold of them, right? So trying to get your SDR to reach out to somebody, I think is good. I think the fact that these apps are kind of new and fresh and hip right now at a large event, it's kind of like getting a piece in the mail. Like if I get a message through this, the SaaStr app or through the Salesforce Dreamforce app, then that might trigger something for me a little differently as the receiver of that message, because it's outside my normal noise box, right? It's breaking through a noise in a certain way. I don't know that that's accurate, but that would be my hypothesis that, I think there's a strategy around it, and that should be explored. And Joe, considering you're the one who loves to go out and do all this blocking and tackling and set up, the fake trade show booth and have people walk through the office and do stuff, that might be a good thing for you guys. Any way to recommend any training? Do you know anybody who does training around how to do good booths, or is there resources of, hey, look, if you're going to start attending, shows, here's a great little mini ebook or something? Either of you have one, or you know anything?
We brought in a guy named Gene McNaughton, who was kind of a consultant for us on a couple of our Dreamforce events, and I'd say the contribution that he brought was he provided a ton of value at the booth that up-leveled the conversations that we were able to have, but he also really brought a lot of focus to, like we talked about earlier, the energy and the passion and making sure people are excited throughout the day. I don't know if his like whole if he would want to be pigeonholed into helping people with events, but I know that that's one person that helped us that we brought in.
And what was his name again, just so people, if they want to take a note?
It's Gene, Gene McNaughton.
McNaughton. All right, cool. And Joe, anything come to mind? Although Joe, it sounds like it's you.
That's the point. I mean, it's an interesting one, right? Because to Mark's point, like, who wants to brand themselves as like the sales trainer for events? So you would sell your training service to marketing, but then you would go train sales, and it's just kind of one of those like, I don't know, right? So the reason Mark and I decided to do this is like, this isn't directed at Outreach's value prop or at Chorus's value prop. This is something that like all the companies that we work with are doing these events and doing these side panels and side dinners. And like, we're all sharing some ideas on the floor. So let's put a webinar together and let's actually kind of share publicly, like, these are some of the best practices that we found. A resource after, I don't have one for you. I'm very sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. I think we know of one at least. So, all right. Well, that is it. That is the end of our 5 rounds of competition. We want to say thank you to both of the fighters coming out strong, having a good time with this. Joe, we really need to thank your wife. I think she's the one who actually is the ultimate winner here.
No doubt.
I agree. She is the ultimate winner. Thank you very much.
But people are still voting in on who they think have won, but I will tell you that this is what we have. We have the first round was actually a draw. It was 2 people, a couple people voted for both of you. Round 2 went to Mark. Round 3 went to Mark. Round 5 went to Joe, and round 4 went to Mark. So Mark, you are our official champion. We will have to do it again sometime. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you, my STRs. Thank you, my A, for your generous support.
Exactly. But, and thank you to the audience who were able to attend and stay on through the end. We had a good time with this one. Hope you guys all have a great day, and we'll see you on LinkedIn or probably at an event. And don't forget about Outreach Unleash on May 6th through 8th. It is going to be a blast down in San Diego.